Family adopts unwanted pit bull. Then son takes bath and dog's reaction made everyone see why. In the outskirts of Minnesota, where winter winds whisper through pine trees and summer days stretch long and lazy, the Heartland Animal Rescue Center stood as a beacon of hope for abandoned animals. It was here, in this modest facility, that our story begins with a pit bull whose soulful eyes seemed to hold both sadness and hope. Before being named Joy, she was simply known as Kennel 23. Her early life remained a mystery, though the shelter workers could tell she had endured hardship. Despite this, she maintained a gentle disposition that set her apart from other dogs. Sarah Matthews, the shelter's lead caretaker, often remarked how the pit bull would comfort other nervous dogs through the kennel bars. There was something special about her, Sarah would later recall. While other dogs would bark or hide when visitors came, she would sit quietly, her tail wagging hopefully. It was as if she knew she was waiting for someone specific. The Peterson family, Mark, Linda, and their children Emily and Jonas, weren't planning to adopt a dog that Saturday morning. Linda, initially hesitant about pit bulls due to common misconceptions, found herself moved by the dog's gentle eyes and peaceful presence. The shelter staff brought her out to meet the family in the play yard. They went home to think about it, but Jonas couldn't stop talking about the dog with the kind eyes. 3 days later, they returned. The adoption papers were signed, and the pit bull found herself leaving the shelter with her new family. It was Jonas who suggested the name Joy, saying, "Because that's what I felt when she first came to me." The first few weeks required adjustment. Joy needed to learn house rules, and the family needed to understand her quirks. She was afraid of thunder, preferred to sleep near doorways, and had an uncanny ability to sense when someone in the family felt sad or unwell. As weeks turned into months, Joy became more than just a family pet. She became an integral part of the Peterson household. During thunderstorms, she would check on each family member, making rounds between bedrooms as if conducting a safety patrol. One particular incident stood out in Linda's memory. Emily had developed a high fever one night, and before anyone else noticed, Joy had stationed herself by the girl's bedside, whining softly until Linda came to check. The fever turned out to be serious enough to require medical attention, and the family credited Joy's alertness for catching it early. "She's not just a dog," Jonas would tell anyone who would listen. "She's like a guardian angel with fur." The neighborhood soon came to know Joy as well. Despite initial concerns about having a pit bull in the area, Joy's gentle nature won over even the most skeptical neighbors. She became a regular at community events, where children would line up to pet her and give her treats. Mrs. Thompson, their elderly neighbor, particularly adored Joy. After falling in her garden one afternoon, she found Joy staying by her side, barking until help arrived. "That dog," she would later say, "has more sense than most people I know." The family's routine settled into a comfortable pattern. Morning walks with Joy became sacred family time. Weekend trips to the dog park turned into social events where the Petersons met other dog owners. Joy even accompanied them on camping trips, where her protective nature proved invaluable during nighttime wildlife encounters. But nobody could have predicted how Joy's protective instincts would be put to the ultimate test one ordinary Tuesday evening. That Tuesday had begun like any other. The Minnesota spring was in full bloom, with lilacs perfuming the air and robins building nests in the backyard maples. Joy had been especially attentive to Jonas that morning, following him more closely than usual as he got ready for school. She wouldn't leave his side at breakfast, Linda would later recall to the doctors. Looking back, it was as if she sensed something wasn't quite right. Throughout the day, the family went about their normal routines. Mark headed to work at the construction company, Emily attended her after-school volleyball practice, and Linda worked from her home office. Jonas had a math test that day and came home tired but happy, announcing he thought he'd done well. "I'm going to take a bath," Jonas had said after dinner, something he often did to relax. The family had just finished a meal of spaghetti and meatballs, Joy's presence under the table hoping for dropped food being a regular part of their dining experience. Linda and Emily decided to enjoy the pleasant evening air on their back porch, discussing plans for the upcoming weekend. Mark was in the garage organizing his tools, Joy, typically content to lie on the porch with family members, seemed restless. She kept getting up, walking to the sliding door, then returning to Linda's side. It was unusual, Emily would later tell the local newspaper. Joy usually loves porch time, but she kept looking at the house and whining softly. The first indication that something was wrong came when Joy suddenly stood up, her ears perked forward. Before anyone could react, she forcefully pushed against the sliding door with her paw, something she'd never done before, and disappeared inside the house. Seconds later, they heard it, the frantic barking that would change their lives forever. The sound was unlike anything they'd ever heard from Joy before. It wasn't her normal bark for squirrels or mail carriers. This was different, urgent, desperate, almost human in its panic. Linda felt her heart drop. There was something in that bark that spoke directly to her maternal instincts. She rushed inside, taking the stairs 2 at a time, following the sound to the bathroom. The door was closed, but she could hear splashing and Joy's continued barking from inside. When she opened the door, the scene before her seemed to play out in slow motion. Jonas was slumped over the side of the tub, his head dangerously close to the water. Joy had somehow managed to get her teeth gently but firmly around Jonas's shirt collar, pulling with all her might to keep his head above water. The next few minutes seemed to move both impossibly fast and agonizingly slow. Linda's scream brought Mark running from the garage, his heavy boots thundering up the stairs. Joy never left Jonas's side, even as Mark lifted his son from the water. "Call 911. Mark's voice cracked as he laid Jonas on the bathroom floor. Linda's trembling fingers could barely dial the numbers, while Emily stood frozen in the doorway, her face pale with shock. Through it all, Joy positioned herself near Jonas's head, watching intently as Mark began CPR. The dog's usual gentle demeanor was replaced by an intense focus, her ears forward, her body tense and alert. "The operator says they're 4 minutes out," Linda managed to say between sobs. Those 4 minutes felt like an eternity. The EMTs later commented on how the dog refused to leave the scene but didn't interfere with their work. She simply watched, occasionally whining softly, as they worked on Jonas. One of the EMTs, Dave Wilson, would later tell his colleagues it was the most aware animal behavior he'd ever witnessed. "That dog knew exactly what was happening," Wilson would report. "She moved when we needed to move, stayed close but not in the way. I've never seen anything like it." The doctors explained that Jonas had suffered a rare type of heart arrhythmia, causing him to lose consciousness in the bathtub. If he had been submerged for even a minute longer. "Your son is alive because of that dog," Dr. Martinez stated firmly. "The timing was absolutely critical. Without the immediate alert and your dog's actions to keep his head above water, we would be having a very different conversation." Back at home, neighbors reported that Joy refused to leave her post by the window. Mrs. Thompson brought over her famous chicken soup and observed the dog's vigilant watch. "She wouldn't eat, wouldn't drink," Mrs. Thompson recalled. "She just sat there, staring down the street, waiting." It wasn't until Linda called home and put the phone on speaker so Joy could hear Jonas's voice that she finally took some water. The hospital kept Jonas for 5 days, running tests to determine the cause of his cardiac event. Joy's story began to spread, challenging long-held prejudices against pit bulls. The shelter where they had adopted Joy used her story in their adoption campaigns, leading to a significant increase in pit bull adoptions. The American Kennel Club heard about Joy's heroism and presented her with their Award for Canine Excellence in a ceremony that brought tears to everyone's eyes. Jonas, still recovering but standing proud beside his 4-legged guardian, accepted the medal on Joy's behalf. "Joy isn't just a hero because she saved me," Jonas said in his simple but moving speech. "She's a hero because she shows people every day what love really means. She proved that heroes come in all shapes and sizes, and sometimes they have 4 legs and a tail." Local veterinarians and animal behaviorists studied Joy's case, amazed by her ability to detect Jonas's cardiac issues. Dr. Sarah Williams, a veterinary specialist, began research into dogs' abilities to sense medical emergencies. "What's remarkable about Joy's case," Dr. Williams noted, is not just her response during the crisis, but her ongoing ability to detect changes in Jonas's heart rhythm. This suggests an extraordinary sensitivity that we're only beginning to understand in dogs. The Petersons' home became something of a pilgrimage site for pit bull advocates and families considering adopting rescue dogs. Joy greeted each visitor with her characteristic gentleness, though she never strayed far from Jonas. 1 year after the incident, the Petersons hosted a special Joy Day celebration, inviting the entire community, rescue workers, and medical staff who had been part of Jonas's rescue. The backyard was filled with people whose lives had been touched by Joy's heroic act. "We've received over 1,000 letters," Linda shared with the gathered crowd. People from all over the country writing to tell us how Joy's story changed their minds about pit bulls or inspired them to adopt from shelters. Some even wrote to say their own adopted dogs saved their lives in different ways. The local animal shelter reported that in the year following Joy's story, their pit bull adoption rate increased by 300%. Sarah Matthews, still working at the shelter, kept a photo of Joy on their success stories wall. "People come in asking for a dog like Joy," Sarah explained. "We tell them every dog has that potential for love and heroism. They just need a chance to show it." Jonas, now fully recovered and fitted with a preventive cardiac device, had become an advocate for both pit bull adoption and water safety awareness. He and Joy visited schools together, teaching children about both subjects. Joy would sit patiently as children petted her, seeming to understand her role as an ambassador for her breed. "The kids always ask if Joy gets tired of being called a hero," Jonas would say. "I tell them she doesn't care about being called a hero. She just cares about being part of our family. That's what makes her special." The medical community took notice too. The local children's hospital started a therapy dog program, specifically including pit bulls in their roster. Joy herself became a certified therapy dog, visiting cardiac patients at the same hospital where Jonas had recovered. "You can see the change in patients' vital signs when Joy enters the room," noted Dr. Martinez. "There's something about her presence that brings comfort. It's like she carries hope with her." The Petersons never forgot that fateful evening, but they chose to focus on the positive changes it brought. Their home became a gathering place for rescue dog supporters, and they started a foundation to help cover adoption fees for families wanting to adopt pit bulls. Joy took it all in stride. Whether she was receiving another award, visiting patients, or simply cuddling with Jonas during movie night, she remained the same gentle soul they'd met at the shelter. Her only priority seemed to be keeping her family safe and happy. On the second anniversary of that life-changing evening, the Petersons gathered in their living room. Joy contentedly sprawled across Jonas's lap. She had developed a few gray hairs around her muzzle, but her eyes remained as bright and alert as ever. "It's funny," Emily mused, scratching Joy behind her ears. "How one decision can change everything. If we hadn't gone to donate those blankets that day." The family had made it a tradition to spend this particular evening together, sharing memories and counting blessings. Joy's heroic act had not only saved Jonas, but had transformed their entire family's perspective on life. Linda had quit her corporate job to work full-time at their foundation, Joy's Legacy, which now helped place rescue dogs with families and provided training support. Mark had become a certified dog trainer in his spare time, specializing in helping families integrate rescue dogs into their homes. "Remember how worried we were about getting a pit bull?" Mark chuckled, watching Joy gently accept treats from Jonas. "Now I can't imagine our lives without her." The impact extended far beyond their family. Their story had inspired changes in local housing policies that previously restricted pit bull ownership. Several apartment complexes in the area had lifted their breed restrictions, leading to more adoptions. Mrs. Thompson, now in her 80s, still brought over chicken soup every Sunday. "Joy taught us all something about judging by appearance," she would say. "These days, when I see a pit bull walking down the street, I think about how that dog could be somebody's guardian angel." The children at Jonas's school had started a Joy Club, dedicated to supporting animal rescue efforts. They raised money through bake sales and car washes, helping other families afford adoption fees and initial veterinary care. "The best part," Jonas shared during their evening of remembrance, is knowing that other dogs like Joy are getting their chance at finding families. Every time I hear about another pit bull being adopted, I think about how that dog might become someone else's hero. Joy, seeming to sense she was the topic of conversation, lifted her head and looked around at her family. Her tail thumped steadily against the couch cushions, that same gentle expression in her eyes that had first captured their hearts at the shelter. As summer turned to fall, Joy's story continued to create ripples of change throughout the community and beyond. The Petersons received an invitation from the state capitol to attend a legislative session discussing animal welfare laws. Joy, wearing her therapy dog vest and various medals, sat calmly as lawmakers discussed the Joy Act, a proposed bill to prevent discrimination against specific dog breeds in housing and insurance policies. "Look at this beautiful animal," Senator Anderson said during the session, gesturing to Joy. "She represents everything we need to understand about judging character over appearance. This dog didn't just save a life. She's helping to save an entire breed's reputation." Back at home, Joy had developed an even more remarkable ability. She began alerting not just to Jonas's cardiac issues, but also to other medical emergencies. When Mr. Peterson started experiencing early signs of a stroke during a family dinner, Joy's persistent pawing and whining prompted them to call an ambulance. The early warning potentially saved Mark from severe complications. Dr. Williams, the veterinary specialist studying Joy's abilities, published a paper in a prestigious medical journal about canine medical detection capabilities, with Joy as the primary case study. "What we're learning from Joy could help develop training protocols for dogs to detect various medical conditions," she explained. "Her natural abilities are helping us understand how dogs might be used more extensively in preventive medicine." The shelter where Joy had spent those 8 months waiting for her family transformed her kennel into a special meeting room called Joy's Corner, where potential adopters could spend time with pit bulls and other often overlooked breeds. The walls were covered with success stories, photos and letters from families who had opened their hearts to dogs they might have previously feared or dismissed. Jonas, now 14, had started writing a children's book about Joy's story. His mother helped him with the manuscript, and a local artist volunteered to do the illustrations. "I want kids to learn early that heroes don't always look the way we expect them to," Jonas explained during a school presentation about his project. Joy took all the attention in stride, remaining the same devoted family protector she'd always been. She still slept outside Jonas's room each night, still comforted Emily during exam stress, and still brought her toys to Mark when he seemed troubled. Her greatest joy remained simply being with her family, whether they were receiving awards or just watching TV together on a quiet evening. As Joy approached her 7th year with the Petersons, her influence continued to grow in unexpected ways. The children's book Jonas wrote, My Hero Has 4 Paws, became a local bestseller, with proceeds going to support rescue organizations. Schools began using it in their character education programs, teaching children about courage, prejudice, and the true meaning of heroism. Joy's routine medical checkup revealed she was in perfect health, though slightly grayer around her muzzle. "She's aging like fine wine," their veterinarian joked, "still just as alert and protective as ever." The vet often used Joy as an example when talking to other pet owners about the importance of the human-animal bond. The Petersons had started hosting monthly Meet Joy events in their backyard, where families considering pit bull adoption could come and learn from their experience. Joy would patiently allow children to pet her, demonstrating the gentle nature that had made her such a perfect family dog. His classmates would ask for updates about Joy, and he'd proudly show them new pictures on his phone. The incident in the bathtub had left him with a deeper appreciation for life and a mission to help others understand the importance of giving all creatures a chance. Joy taught me that sometimes the best things in life come from taking a chance on something others might fear, Jonas would say during his speaking engagements at rescue events. She also taught me that love doesn't care what package it comes in. The Medical Alert program inspired by Joy had expanded to 3 more hospitals in the state. Dogs, many of them pit bulls from rescue situations, were being trained to detect various medical conditions. The program coordinators called it the Joy Initiative, and its success rates were impressive. One particularly meaningful moment came when the Petersons received a letter from a family in Wisconsin. Their daughter had been saved by a pit bull they had adopted after reading Joy's story. The dog had alerted them to their child's seizure in the middle of the night, much like Joy had done for Jonas. "Your joy inspired us to give our Sophie a chance," the letter read. "Now she's saved our daughter's life." These stories keep creating ripples of hope and love. The Petersons organized a special meeting between Joy and Sophie, the two hero dogs. The local news covered the event, capturing the moment when the two pit bulls gently greeted each other, their families watching with tear-filled eyes. It was a powerful testimony to how one act of heroism could inspire another. As Joy entered her senior years, she showed no signs of slowing down in her devotion to her family. She still accompanied Jonas to his cardiac checkups, still patrolled the house at night, and still welcomed every visitor with her characteristic gentle warmth. The only concession to age was a slight slowdown on their daily walks and a preference for shorter play sessions. "She's taught us so much about aging gracefully," Linda would say. "Joy shows us that getting older doesn't mean being any less valuable or loving." The family celebrated each anniversary of Joy's adoption with special treats and a family photo session. These photos, displayed chronologically in their living room, told the story of not just a dog and her family, but of a movement that had changed countless lives.